This is The Download from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Newton Shuttlecotty.
And I'm Gavin Gaddis.
The Download is brought to you by Podscribe. Find out more at podscribe.com.
This week, creating a curiosity gap for podcasts, brands catching up with new FTC influencer legislation, and survey on audience feelings on brands and politics as well as social issues. Let's get started. This Tuesday, Tom Webster shared his secret philosophy to great podcast recommendations. Curiosity is a better driver of interest in media than a plain label. The example given is how one might pitch the Scottish electronica duo Boards of Canada. One could simply say their music is lo-fi chill electronic and be done with it. But even just explaining the band title, music inspired by the uniquely low-fidelity synth found in school PSA films from the 1970s and 80s, produced and widely distributed by the Film Board of Canada, gives both context and breeds further curiosity. Webster gives examples on how one would recommend podcasts such as Maintenance Phase or 20,000 Hertz using this philosophy. A quote from Webster, quote, "My testimonials aren't exactly describing a show as much as they are highlighting a curiosity gap. Don't you wish you knew? Don't you wish you had this? Don't you wish you could go back to that feeling?" Often this kind of description can sound arrogant or self-aggrandizing as marketing if you say it, but it can really sing as a testimonial. Maybe you can't say it yourself, but if you can highlight it when someone else says it, this is when the real magic can happen. End quote. People naturally want to fill in information gaps, which Webster then proposes can further apply to feelings. Boards of Canada evokes of nostalgia for a version of being a kid in the late 1970s and 1980s that is not commonly captured in pop culture. Selling podcasts to people based on the feeling and tone they create could land more audience members who would listen to podcasts if they had a good reason to try.
Last Wednesday, from the Drum Editor-in-Chief, Gordon Young, as of October 14th, new legislation from the FTC regarding fake endorsements and undisclosed influencer partnerships has gone into effect. The new rules, focusing on endorsements and partnerships, carries a fine of up to $43,792 per violation. Sway ID's Kaya Majumdar says the truly surprising aspect of the new legislation is the speed at which it was passed, with many brands unaware of concepts that used to be guidelines now carrying a fine. She compares the potential upcoming flood of influencer marketing infractions to brands encountering ADA lawsuits over website accessibility. The new FTC crackdown aims to stem the tide of fake reviews, undisclosed paid endorsements, and misleading testimonials.
This Tuesday from Allison Smith at Digiday. While the July and October editions of Amazon's biannual Prime Day event posted positive numbers for the company, their success does not naturally indicate an upcoming holly jolly shopping season. A quote from the article, quote, "The National Retail Federation, the country's largest retail trade group, said earlier this month that it expects holiday sales in the U.S. to grow between 2.5% and 3.5% from November to December, a slower pace than last year when sales rose 5.3%. This month, Deloitte also forecast that shoppers plan to spend 3% less on holiday gifts compared to a year ago." End quote. Only 24% of consumers surveyed by Gartner intend on waiting to start their holiday shopping until November or December. This is also compounded by a busy year full of attention-occupying events, from the Olympics to the upcoming U.S. election. A quote from Amazon CFO Brian Oslavsky, quote, "There's a lot of events that are occupying people's attention right now, from political conventions to the election itself to the Olympics. No matter what you're selling or providing, customers only have so much attention." End quote. Podcasts can be a powerful tool for cutting through that noise and getting brand deals directly to consumers thanks to leaned-in audiences and strong trust in host endorsements.
This Monday, from Erica Wellis writing for Ad Age, a new report from communications agency Mbooth surveyed 3,015 Americans aged 18 to 55, fielded by research company Savanta over late August and early September. The survey focused on respondents' feelings towards brands that partake in politically charged content, be it directly or indirectly, via working with an influencer who also posts political content separately. 72% of respondents believe if a company or brand works with an influencer who's vocal about their politics, the company is endorsing that point of view. 75% responded positively to the premise brands do not need to play in politics. A quote from Mbooth CCO A.G. Bevilacqua, quote, "We are not seeing the market back away from influencers. We recommend that brands look at their beliefs first. More activist brands will have a different risk tolerance. The vanilla middle is not appealing to consumers, so either do not comment if you cannot back it up, or take a stand and do not retreat," end quote. Just over half of respondents believe companies should take a stance on moral issues, with 30% further saying brands should take a stance regardless of if the stance agrees with the respondents' views. That said, 43% say virtue signaling, professing a stance to look good without committing prior effort to the cause, reflects poorly on brands. Despite social media campaigns organized by activist Robbie Starbuck meant to pressure brands into reversing DEI initiatives, to some success with John Deere, Toyota, Molson Coors, and others, the Mbooth study finds DEI still ranks 6th in important factors that determine what impact a brand has on culture, according to respondents.
Finally, it's time for our quick hits. These are articles that didn't quite make the cut for today's episode, but are still worth including in your weekend reading. This week, the podcast Glossary, hosted by Sounds Profitable, has been translated into Spanish thanks to Genuina Media. How Emotion AI Will Transform Podcast Advertising by Alberto Bitella. A brief overview of the history of parasocial relationships, as well as how voice clones could be upgraded with emotional AI to deliver more effective host-read run-of-network ads. Podcast advertising transcends audio. Podcast-first omnichannel campaigns drive 84% listener action, Acast study finds. A new study from Acast looks at the listening habits of podcast consumers and how to reach them. And finally, beauty brands could use a sonic glow-up, a report from Alyssa Myers. A new report from sonic branding agency AMP looks at the state and future potential of sonic branding for beauty companies.
And that was the download, brought to you by Sounds Profitable. I know we went through today's stories fast, so be sure to check out the links to every article mentioned right in your podcast listening app or on the download section of soundsprofitable.com. And thank you for sticking with us as we bring you the top stories you might have missed from the past week. I'm Newton Shuttlecotty.
And I'm Gavin Gaddis. Our producers are myself, Newton Shuttlecotty, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. Special thanks to Spreaker for hosting the download, and special thanks to you for joining us. Robot.
Download complete.